Okay. So, the Trump presidency, the fourth estate, oh my goodness. The Hegelian dialectic has been used since World War II to, um, and it was used in the Trump thing. I mean, he's been splashing. He's not even one of the largest builders. His son-in-law is from a much wealthier building family, or um, I mean, never heard of him before. Anyway, the rest of us in America who've not been to Manhattan, people pay top dollar for the place. This would, my teeny tiny place would be an enormous Manhattan apartment, and probably cost me $1 million a year. I mean, that's how expensive real estate is there. I might be exaggerating, but it would be a very pretty penny. Um, so he wasn't the greatest. He's just always been in our face, public, a darling of the media. He was on Saturday Night Live more than once. I mean, as the host. So fun. The loss of media credibility. We would like to think that public disapproval of such tactics would be a hot topic in the media. We would like to think the newsrooms of America would be ablaze with impassioned defenders of free speech, unmasking the villains and crying out for justice, but that hasn't happened. We can no longer trust the mainstream to give us a fair and balanced account of political events. Instead, it has become only too clear that the mainstream media stands on the other side. If any good news can be found in this scenario, it is that the public is not blind to what has been happening. They've been watching and they're not buying everything they've been told. Shortly after the election in 2016, a Media Research Center poll of more than 2,000 adults found that even as they fanned the, uh, fanned the flames of controversy, the mainstream media managed to alienate virtually every politically active American. The survey found that 78% of respondents thought that the media coverage of the 2016 presidential election campaign was biased, 69% believed the news media were not honest and truthful, and 59% said the media was biased in favor of Hillary Clinton, while just 21% said the media was biased in favor of Trump. But perhaps most telling was the fact that fully 97% of registered U.S. voters in the survey said they did not let the media bias influence their vote. In other words, for them, the media had already lost all credibility. So anyway, um, an answer to prayer, and I was totally flabbergasted. You're praying for your daughter to win, Christian. You're praying for not okay. The marriage fell apart. Started I mean, screaming adulterer. Marla's screaming. I mean, he's just screaming it. And that wife has prevented him from having a relationship with his daughter, or did, and that's been healed, which is nice. Wow. But he ended up being an answer to prayer. Again, it is very much the Cyrus thing. There's no way this guy's going to be our savior, but he is. An answer to prayer. While some people interpreted Donald Trump's win as a political revolution, many conservative Christians saw it as a cultural counter-revolution and an answer to prayer. Respected journalist David Altman articulated this very well in an op-ed published by Charisma magazine. I've known Altman, who is now retired since the 70s when he worked as a senior correspondent for Time magazine, a post he held for 23 years. An outspoken, charismatic Aikman served as Times bureau chief in Berlin, Jerusalem, and Beijing and covered Middle East affairs from Jerusalem. He had reported from 5 continents and more than 55 countries, and wrote 3 Man of the Year cover stories for Time. During his distinguished career, Eichmann interviewed many world figures from Alexander, I can't say that, to Mother Teresa, to Billy Graham. As a journalist, he understood the animosity of the members of the media toward Trump, who publicly denounced reporters at almost every opportunity. The fact that so many journalists were oblivious, okay, I'm skipping, oblivious about the extent of Trump's support showed that very few of them had spent any time in the so-called flyover zones where Trump had millions of followers. The Beltway pundits were blinded by their own wishful thinking about the upcoming election. No, this election had Ted Cruz running for president, a um, a genius with a photographic memory, who not only was a very outspoken Christian, but was so intelligent that he was able to um, be popularly voted or promoted. You know, I'm a Christian that just got completely destroyed because I'm a Christian. Well, he's so smart. So I was like, he would make it. He would always be asking Jesus what to do, like Pence does. What Pence has been accused of. Well, Ted would have definitely done that too, and it would be a real answer to prayer. Um, and yeah, I know that he couldn't be elected because he was so Christian, but Christians needed to be behind him. And what I would like to see is that Trump make him a Supreme Court, because under Marbury versus Madison, and Clarence Thomas has no allies anymore. I mean, he has jurist allies, but no real allies, since Scalia died under suspicious circumstances. Um, I would like to see Cruz as Supreme Court, and that would carry the day. Now, we can't ever, don't worry, those of you who got Roe v. Wade and the Supreme Court decision in same-sex marital contracts. We, just like Roe v. Wade can't be turned around, this can't either. And it's an issue of 10th Amendment and contract laws, not religion, or not, but it is not a civil rights issue. It's a contracts issue, and that's where it can now be attacked in that way. It's all about no-fault divorce. When licensing a marriage became a state purview under the mores of the 10th Amendment, then you have to let everybody contract. That's how it should have been done, and they didn't do it that way. Because in the state, there's a state constitution, and the people have representatives, and so the people have a greater voice in state issues. Then it becomes a federal question, and the federal government can override that. But federalism doesn't exist anymore. So anyway, with that in mind, you could have somebody violating all the eligibility rules and to become president. Because eligibility rules come up through the 10th Amendment too. And nobody tried that. Cruz was a state attorney. He should have been doing that. That was my thing. Nobody did. So I'm very grateful that God allowed this, because it's our last bit of mercy. I think Jesus is returning soon. But if he doesn't, judgment's going to fall on this country. I mean, that was the thing. But the second part of the judgment was going to be Rodham. It was going to be a great shaking up. That's what the Lord told me. And then without her, uh, without us going under the rod, we're just going to explode. And again, I just saw a big red line and the land rumble in Louisiana. And this all started with the 2008, March 2008 vision, the only vision I've ever had of us imploding, the land itself.